The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned highway as Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his scope, watching the horde shamble through the valley below. 300 zombies, maybe more, their decomposing forms creating a grotesque parade of death that stretched for nearly half a mile. Behind him, his 7-person tactical unit prepared their weapons with the practiced efficiency of warriors who had survived 18 months in the Wasteland. Jake Thompson, their sniper, methodically cleaned his rifle while scanning the distant ridgelines through his binoculars. Riley Patterson, their field medic, checked and rechecked her medical supplies, knowing that one mistake in the coming battle could mean the difference between life and death for any of them. Devin Carter, their tech specialist and engineer, fine-tuned the explosive devices they had spent the previous night crafting from salvaged materials found in the ruins of nearby settlements. The group had earned their reputation as the most effective zombie elimination unit in the Southern Territories, but this mission was different. Intelligence gathered from survivor settlements indicated that this particular horde was being driven by something more than basic instinct. Reports spoke of coordinated movements, strategic positioning, and most disturbing of all, evidence of primitive tool use among the infected. Marcus had initially dismissed these reports as the fevered imagination of terrified civilians, but 3 days of surveillance had confirmed his worst fears. These zombies were evolving, adapting, becoming something far more dangerous than the mindless flesh-eaters they had fought for so long. Alexis Mitchell, their scout, emerged from the morning mist like a ghost, her camouflage gear making her nearly invisible against the rocky terrain. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to navigate the wasteland without making a sound, a skill that had kept her alive when louder, more aggressive survivors had long since become zombie food. Her reconnaissance report was delivered in whispered, urgent tones that made Marcus's blood run cold. The horde wasn't just moving randomly through the valley. They were following a deliberate route toward the riverside settlement, home to nearly 200 survivors who had managed to build something resembling civilization in the chaos of the post-apocalyptic world. Tyler Brooks, their heavy weapons specialist, shouldered his modified machine gun and checked the ammunition belts draped across his massive frame. The man was built like a fortress, all muscle and determination, with scars covering his arms that told the story of countless battles against the undead. His weapon of choice was a salvaged military-grade machine gun that he had personally modified to fire specialized rounds designed to maximize damage against zombie tissue. Beside him, Emma Walsh, their strategist and demolitions expert, spread a hand-drawn map across a flat boulder, marking positions and calculating angles with the precision of a chess master planning her next move. The plan they had developed was ambitious and dangerous, requiring split-second timing and absolute trust in each other's abilities. They would establish overlapping fields of fire along the narrow canyon that the horde would have to traverse to reach the settlement. Devin had rigged a series of explosive charges along the canyon walls that could create landslides, potentially dividing the horde into smaller, more manageable groups. Jake would position himself on the highest point, providing overwatch and picking off any zombies that showed signs of the enhanced intelligence they had been warned about. Riley would establish a mobile medical station in a defensible position, ready to treat injuries while maintaining an escape route if the situation deteriorated beyond recovery. Marcus studied the approaching horde through his binoculars, noting details that chilled him to the bone. Some of the zombies carried crude weapons, sharpened sticks, and metal fragments that suggested a level of planning and forethought that contradicted everything they thought they knew about the infected. Others moved in formation-like patterns, maintaining spacing and direction in ways that seemed impossible for creatures driven purely by hunger and instinct. Most disturbing of all were the scouts, faster-moving zombies that ranged ahead of the main group, appearing to gather information and relay it back through some form of primitive communication. The team had faced impossible odds before, but this felt different. The rules of engagement were changing, and the comfortable certainties they had relied upon for survival were crumbling like the abandoned cities that dotted the wasteland. Emma finished marking the final positions on her map and looked up at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much death and destruction. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the underlying tension when she spoke about the ammunition counts and estimated casualty rates for their planned engagement. As the zombie horde drew closer to the canyon entrance, Marcus made his final equipment check and gathered his team for their pre-battle ritual. They stood in a circle, hands clasped together, each warrior offering a silent prayer to whatever god still listened in this broken world. The morning wind carried the stench of decay and the low moaning sounds that preceded every zombie assault, but it also carried something else, something that made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. Intelligence. Purpose. The unmistakable signs that their enemy was no longer just a mindless force of nature, but something far more terrifying. The first explosive charge detonated with a thunderous roar that echoed through the canyon like the voice of an angry god, sending tons of rock cascading down the steep walls in a deadly avalanche. Devon's timing was perfect, catching the lead elements of the zombie horde as they entered the narrow passage between the towering stone walls. The landslide created exactly the barrier they had hoped for, splitting the massive group into three distinct sections that could be engaged separately rather than as one overwhelming mass. Marcus watched through his scope as dozens of zombies disappeared beneath the crushing weight of falling stone, their inhuman screams mixing with the rumble of shifting earth and debris. Jake's rifle cracked from his elevated position, the sound sharp and precise in the sudden silence that followed the explosion. His first target was one of the scout zombies that had somehow anticipated the trap, diving for cover behind a boulder with reflexes that seemed impossible for a creature that should have been operating on pure instinct. The specialized round took the zombie's head clean off, but not before Marcus noticed that it had been carrying a crude communication device, a collection of bones and metal that rattled in specific patterns. The implication sent a chill down his spine as he realized they were facing an enemy that had developed its own form of tactical communication. Riley had positioned herself in a natural cave formation that provided excellent cover while maintaining visual contact with all team members. Her medical station was organized with military precision, tourniquets and bandages arranged for instant access, pain medication measured and ready for injection. Through her binoculars, she watched Alexis go through the rocky terrain, using shadows and elevation changes to remain invisible while gathering real-time intelligence on zombie movements and behaviors. The scouts' hand signals indicated that the separated zombie groups were not responding randomly to the attack, but were actually attempting to regroup using alternate routes through the canyon system. Tyler's machine gun opened up in controlled bursts, each sequence carefully aimed to maximize damage while conserving ammunition. The heavy weapons specialist had learned through bitter experience that sustained fire might feel satisfying, but precision and patience were what kept soldiers alive in extended engagements. His targets were the larger zombies that appeared to be directing the movements of smaller groups, creatures that stood upright with an alertness that suggested retained cognitive function. Each burst sent modified rounds tearing through zombie flesh, the specialized ammunition designed to expand and fragment upon impact, causing maximum tissue damage and ensuring that even glancing hits would be fatal. Emma's demolitions expertise came into play as the middle section of the horde attempted to scale the canyon walls, using primitive tools and coordinated climbing techniques that defied everything the team thought they knew about zombie capabilities. Her precisely placed charges created a series of smaller avalanches, each one timed to catch clusters of climbing zombies and send them tumbling back to the canyon floor. The sound of her detonator clicking was almost lost in the chaos of battle, but each explosion was perfectly positioned to maximize casualties while minimizing the risk to her own team members. Marcus coordinated the engagement through a series of hand signals and tactical communications, his years of military experience allowing him to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. The zombie horde's response to their attack was unlike anything he had encountered in 18 months of wasteland warfare. Instead of the mindless charge he expected, the creatures were adapting their tactics in real time, using cover effectively and attempting to flank their positions through routes that should have been impossible for shambling corpses to navigate. The realization that they were fighting intelligent zombies changed everything about their tactical situation. Traditional zombie engagement protocols assumed an enemy driven by hunger and lacking strategic thinking, but these creatures were demonstrating planning, coordination, and problem-solving abilities that suggested their infection had somehow enhanced rather than destroyed their cognitive functions. Devon's improvised explosive devices continued to thin the zombie ranks, but he noticed that the survivors were learning from each detonation, avoiding similar traps and adjusting their movement patterns to minimize exposure to further attacks. Through the smoke and dust of battle, Alexis spotted something that made her blood freeze in her veins. A group of zombies had detached from the main force and was moving through a hidden ravine that would allow them to bypass the entire defensive position and attack the team from behind. Her warning whistle cut through the noise of gunfire and explosions, alerting Marcus to the flanking maneuver just as the first of the zombie scouts emerged from concealment less than 50 meters from their position. The situation was deteriorating rapidly as the team found themselves caught between the main zombie force in the canyon and the flanking group approaching from their rear. Riley began preparing for emergency evacuation procedures, knowing that their carefully planned defensive position could become a death trap if they were surrounded. Her medical training included battlefield triage protocols, and she was already calculating which team members would need immediate attention if the engagement turned into a running firefight through the wasteland. Jake's sniper rifle continued its deadly work, but even his exceptional marksmanship couldn't be everywhere at once. The evolved zombies were demonstrating tactical awareness that included using terrain for cover, coordinating their movements, and most disturbing of all, appearing to communicate complex information about defensive positions and team member locations. As the flanking force closed distance, Marcus made the decision that would determine whether his team lived or died in the next few minutes. Marcus barked orders through his tactical radio as the flanking zombies emerged from the ravine with coordinated precision that defied every survival manual ever written about the undead. The team executed a fighting withdrawal that had been drilled into them through months of desperate battles, but these weren't the shambling corpses they had trained to fight. These creatures moved with purpose, using hand signals that seemed impossibly complex for beings whose brains should have been rotted beyond any cognitive function. Tyler pivoted his machine gun toward the new threat, laying down suppressing fire that forced the flanking zombies to seek cover behind massive boulders and fallen trees, buying precious seconds for the team to reposition. Alexis sprinted across the rocky terrain with inhuman speed, her scout training allowing her to navigate the treacherous footing while maintaining perfect balance and situational awareness. She reached an elevated position that provided overlapping fields of fire on both zombie groups, her assault rifle chattering in short, controlled bursts that dropped 3 zombies in rapid succession. Her ammunition count was becoming critical, and she knew that extended firefights favored the enemy simply because zombies didn't run out of bullets or need to reload their weapons. The main zombie force in the canyon had reorganized faster than anyone thought possible, with larger specimens appearing to direct smaller groups through a combination of gestures and guttural sounds that carried meaning beyond simple moaning. Emma triggered her remaining explosive charges in sequence, creating a rolling barrage that sent chunks of canyon wall crashing down onto the advancing horde. Each detonation was perfectly timed to maximize casualties, but she watched in growing horror as the surviving zombies immediately adapted their movement patterns, spreading out and using irregular timing to minimize losses from future explosions. Devon's engineering background proved invaluable as he improvised new defensive measures from the materials at hand, quickly assembling tripwires and improvised claymore mines from salvaged electronics and metal fragments. His devices were crude but effective, designed to channel zombie movement into predetermined kill zones where the team's concentrated firepower could be most effective. The technical specialist worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that every second of preparation could mean the difference between successful extraction and becoming zombie food. Riley's medical station became a fortress of focused calm in the midst of chaos, her trained hands working automatically to prepare emergency medical supplies while her eyes tracked the tactical situation developing around their position. She had treated gunshot wounds, zombie bites, and traumatic injuries under fire before, but the intelligence displayed by their current enemies suggested that traditional wound patterns might not apply. These zombies were using weapons and tactics that could create entirely new categories of battlefield injuries. Jake's sniper rifle continued its deadly precision work from his overwatch position, but even his exceptional skills were being tested by enemies that understood the concept of cover and concealment. His targets were learning to minimize their exposure time, using quick movements and terrain masking that suggested tactical training or instinctive combat knowledge. Each shot had to count, not just because ammunition was limited, but because missing gave the zombies valuable information about his position and capabilities. The flanking group had advanced to within 30 meters of the team's defensive perimeter when Marcus made a decision that violated every principle of tactical engagement he had ever learned. Instead of continuing the fighting withdrawal, he ordered his team to advance directly into the larger zombie force in the canyon, gambling that aggressive action would disrupt whatever coordination system the creatures were using. The maneuver was insane by conventional standards, but conventional tactics had failed the moment they encountered zombies capable of strategic thinking. Tyler's machine gun roared to life as the team charged down the canyon slope, his suppressing fire creating a corridor of destruction through the zombie ranks. The heavy weapon specialist had loaded his weapon with every type of specialized ammunition he possessed, alternating between explosive rounds, armor-piercing bullets, and fragmenting projectiles designed to cause maximum tissue damage. His advance was methodical and devastating, each burst of fire timed to provide cover for his teammates while advancing toward their objective. Emma's demolitions expertise became crucial as she placed shaped charges against strategic points along the canyon walls, creating controlled collapses that would seal off pursuit routes and limit the zombies' ability to follow them. Her calculations had to be perfect, because too little explosive force would leave escape routes open for the enemy, while too much would bring down the entire canyon system and trap her own team beneath tons of rock and debris. The coordinated assault caught the main zombie force off guard, their apparent tactical intelligence struggling to adapt to such an aggressive and seemingly suicidal maneuver. Marcus led from the front, his assault rifle barking death as he carved a path through zombie ranks that tried to close around his team. The creatures' weapons were crude but effective, sharpened metal and stone implements that could cause serious injury if they connected with human flesh. Alexis provided mobile overwatch as the team advanced, her position changing constantly to maintain visual contact with all team members while engaging targets of opportunity. Her role as scout had evolved into something approaching battlefield command and control, coordinating team movements through hand signals and brief radio transmissions. The coordination required was immense, demanding split-second timing and absolute trust in each team member's abilities. Devon's improvised explosive devices created chaos in the zombie ranks as they detonated in sequence, each explosion perfectly timed to maximize disruption of enemy formations. His technical background allowed him to modify timing mechanisms on the fly, adjusting detonation sequences to account for changing tactical situations and enemy movement patterns. The engineering challenges were immense, but his solutions were elegant and deadly. As the team fought their way through the canyon, Riley maintained her mobile medical station, ready to provide immediate treatment for any injuries while keeping pace with the advancing unit. Her medical supplies were organized for maximum efficiency, allowing her to provide life-saving treatment under fire without compromising the team's forward momentum. The stakes continued climbing with each passing moment. The canyon walls echoed with the thunderous crack of gunfire and explosions as Marcus led his team deeper into the zombie-infested corridor, their aggressive assault having caught the undead horde completely off guard. Devon's improvised explosives continued detonating in carefully timed sequences, sending shrapnel and rock fragments tearing through zombie ranks while creating temporary barriers that channeled the creatures into predetermined kill zones. The tactical situation was evolving rapidly as Tyler's machine gun carved devastating swaths through the enemy formation, his heavy weapons fire so intense that steam rose from the barrel despite the morning chill. Riley moved with practiced efficiency behind the advancing line, her medical kit bouncing against her hip as she maintained visual contact with each team member, ready to provide immediate trauma care if anyone took a hit from the zombies' crude but potentially lethal weapons. Jake's sniper fire from the elevated positions had become a deadly symphony of precision shooting, each round carefully placed to eliminate zombie leaders and disrupt their communication networks. His scope revealed disturbing details about the enemy's organization, including what appeared to be a command structure with larger zombies directing smaller groups through complex gestures and vocal signals that suggested retained memory of military or tactical training. The implications were terrifying because it meant the infection hadn't simply reanimated dead tissue, but had somehow preserved and potentially enhanced strategic thinking capabilities while eliminating normal human moral constraints and self-preservation instincts. Alexis ghosted through the rocky terrain parallel to the main advance, her assault rifle chattering in controlled bursts as she engaged targets of opportunity while maintaining overwatch responsibilities. Her scout training allowed her to identify weak points in the zombie formation, gaps in their defensive line that could be exploited by coordinated team movements. Through her scope, she noticed that some zombies were carrying equipment that looked suspiciously like military communication devices, modified and improvised but clearly functional based on the coordinated responses she observed when zombie units received what appeared to be tactical instructions from distant sources. Emma's demolitions work reached a crescendo as she triggered a massive shaped charge that brought down an entire section of canyon wall, creating a choke point that forced the remaining zombies into a narrow corridor where concentrated firepower could be most effective. Her calculations were perfect, channeling the enemy into a killing field while providing the team with multiple escape routes if the situation deteriorated beyond recovery. The explosion sent a mushroom cloud of dust and debris high into the morning sky, momentarily obscuring vision but also masking the team's movements as they pressed their attack deeper into zombie territory. The zombie response to their assault revealed tactical sophistication that challenged every assumption about post-apocalyptic survival warfare. Instead of the mindless charge expected from reanimated corpses, the creatures executed what appeared to be a fighting withdrawal, using covering fire from improvised projectile weapons while maintaining unit cohesion and communication. Marcus watched in fascination and horror as zombie squads provided mutual support, with some creatures laying down suppressing fire while others maneuvered to flanking positions that suggested retained knowledge of small unit tactics and battlefield coordination. Devon's technical expertise became crucial as he identified and disabled several zombie communication devices, crude but effective radio equipment that had been allowing distant zombie commanders to coordinate the canyon battle. His electronics background allowed him to trace signal sources and jam frequencies, gradually isolating the local zombie force from whatever larger command structure had been directing their movements. The devices themselves were fascinating examples of post-apocalyptic engineering, combining salvaged military equipment with improvised components in ways that suggested the zombies retained significant technical knowledge despite their physical deterioration. Tyler's advance had become a mobile fortress of devastating firepower, his machine gun suppressing zombie positions while his team moved through the canyon systematically eliminating pockets of resistance. The heavy weapons specialist had developed an almost supernatural awareness of ammunition expenditure, knowing exactly how many rounds remained and calculating engagement distances to maximize effectiveness while conserving precious bullets. His weapon had become an extension of his will, delivering precisely controlled bursts that dropped zombies with mechanical efficiency while avoiding the ammunition waste that had killed so many other survivors. Riley's medical station had evolved into a mobile trauma center, her supplies organized for maximum efficiency while maintaining the flexibility needed for battlefield medicine under extreme conditions. Her training included combat casualty care protocols that had been adapted for zombie warfare, accounting for the unique injury patterns caused by infected attacks and the psychological trauma of fighting enemies that had once been human. Through her binoculars, she monitored team vital signs and stress indicators, ready to provide immediate psychological support if any team member showed signs of combat stress or tactical decision-making breakdown. The deeper they penetrated into the canyon, the more organized the zombie resistance became, suggesting they were approaching something important enough to warrant increasingly sophisticated defensive measures. Marcus began noticing patterns in zombie deployment that indicated strategic thinking on a scale far beyond individual unit tactics, involving resource allocation, defensive positioning, and what appeared to be contingency planning for multiple possible scenarios. The creatures weren't just defending territory, they were protecting something valuable, something that required coordination between multiple zombie groups across a wide geographical area. As the team rounded a bend in the canyon, they encountered their first glimpse of what the zombies had been protecting with such determination and tactical sophistication. In a natural amphitheater carved from the canyon walls, hundreds of zombies stood in organized formations around what appeared to be a massive construction project, primitive but clearly purposeful engineering that suggested the infected had retained enough cognitive function to engage in complex cooperative behavior and long-term planning that challenged everything humanity thought it knew about the nature of the zombie threat. The construction project sprawled across the canyon floor like a monument to organized madness, a complex network of interconnected structures built from salvaged materials, human bones, and metal scavenged from the ruins of civilization. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as he realized the scope of what they were witnessing through their scopes and binoculars. The zombies hadn't just retained their intelligence, they had been working together for months, possibly years, to build what appeared to be a massive breeding and training facility designed to create even more advanced versions of their kind. Watchtowers constructed from automobile frames and concrete rubble provided elevated positions for zombie sentries, while underground tunnels suggested a complex network that extended far beyond what was visible from their current position. Jake's sniper scope revealed details that made his hands shake with suppressed terror as he observed zombie technicians working with sophisticated equipment that had clearly been salvaged from military installations and research facilities. These weren't the shambling corpses of popular imagination, but organized beings capable of engineering projects that required planning, resource allocation, and technical expertise that should have been impossible for creatures driven by basic hunger instincts. His rifle tracked across multiple targets, trying to identify priority threats while calculating ammunition requirements for an engagement that could easily involve thousands of enemies rather than the hundreds they had originally anticipated. Devon's technical background allowed him to recognize some of the equipment being used in the zombie construction project, including what appeared to be communication arrays, power generation systems, and most disturbing of all, laboratory facilities that suggested active research and development activities. The implications were staggering because they indicated that the zombie infection wasn't static, but was continuing to evolve and improve through deliberate scientific methodology rather than random mutation. His engineering knowledge helped him identify structural weak points in the zombie facility, potential targets that could be exploited if the team had sufficient explosives and could somehow penetrate the massive defensive perimeter. Alexis moved like a shadow through the rocky terrain above the amphitheater, her scout training allowing her to gather intelligence while remaining undetected by the zombie sentries posted throughout the area. Through her scope, she observed zombie work crews following what appeared to be detailed construction plans, with supervisory creatures directing activities through complex hand signals and vocal communications that suggested a sophisticated organizational hierarchy. The level of coordination was unprecedented, involving hundreds of individual zombies working toward common objectives that required sustained effort over extended time periods. Tyler's machine gun remained ready for immediate action, but even his devastating firepower would be inadequate against the sheer number of enemies visible in the canyon below. The heavy weapons specialist began calculating fields of fire and ammunition requirements for a fighting withdrawal, knowing that their original mission parameters had been completely invalidated by the discovery of this massive zombie installation. His tactical experience suggested that they were looking at an enemy force capable of sustained military operations rather than the random raids and individual attacks that had characterized zombie activity throughout the Wasteland. Riley's medical training included psychological assessment protocols, and she could see the stress indicators building in her teammates as they processed the implications of what they were observing. The discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about zombie capabilities and suggested that humanity's survival prospects were far more precarious than anyone had realized. Her medical supplies would be completely inadequate for treating injuries sustained in combat against such a large and well-organized enemy force, making immediate extraction their only viable option for survival. Emma's demolitions expertise became crucial as she identified potential targets within the zombie facility that could cause maximum disruption if properly attacked with the limited explosives remaining in their inventory. Her calculations suggested that strategic placement of shaped charges could collapse key structural elements and potentially trigger cascading failures throughout the construction project. However, the defensive measures visible throughout the facility indicated that the zombies had anticipated potential sabotage attempts and had implemented countermeasures that would make any attack extremely dangerous for the infiltrating team. Marcus coordinated intelligence gathering through tactical communications, trying to compile enough information to brief command about the unprecedented threat they had discovered while maintaining operational security and team safety. The zombie facility represented a paradigm shift in post-apocalyptic warfare, suggesting that humanity was facing an organized enemy capable of strategic planning, technological development, and coordinated military operations across wide geographical areas. The mission had evolved from simple zombie elimination to intelligence gathering that could determine the survival prospects for every remaining human settlement. The amphitheater buzzed with activity as zombie work crews continued their construction projects with mechanical efficiency, following schedules and protocols that suggested sophisticated project management capabilities. Through their observation equipment, the team could see zombies operating machinery, following blueprints, and conducting what appeared to be quality control inspections on completed work. The sight was profoundly disturbing because it indicated that the infection had preserved not just basic cognitive functions, but specialized technical knowledge and organizational skills that enabled complex cooperative behavior. Devon's electronics equipment detected multiple radio frequencies emanating from the zombie facility, suggesting active communication networks that connected this installation to other zombie settlements across the region. His signal analysis indicated encrypted transmissions, coordination protocols, and data sharing that resembled military communication systems rather than the primitive signaling they had observed in smaller zombie groups. The technical sophistication suggested access to advanced equipment and personnel with specialized training in communications and information technology. As the team gathered intelligence on the massive zombie installation, movement sensors throughout the facility began activating in response to their presence, indicating that their observation position had been detected by enemy surveillance systems. The discovery meant that their tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, with zombie security forces beginning to mobilize in response to the perceived threat. Marcus made the decision that would determine whether his team escaped with vital intelligence or became casualties in humanity's first encounter with organized zombie civilization. Marcus triggered the emergency extraction protocol as alarm systems throughout the zombie facility began wailing with mechanical precision, their electronic warnings echoing off the canyon walls like the screams of dying machines. The surveillance network had pinpointed their observation position with terrifying accuracy, and zombie security forces were already mobilizing in coordinated formations that demonstrated military-level tactical training and equipment. Jake's sniper rifle cracked repeatedly as he provided covering fire for the team's retreat, his precision shots targeting zombie communication specialists and command personnel in an attempt to disrupt their coordination during the critical first minutes of pursuit. Devon's technical expertise became vital as he deployed electronic countermeasures, jamming zombie radio frequencies and triggering false signals designed to confuse their tracking systems while buying precious seconds for escape. The zombie response was unlike anything they had encountered during 18 months of Wasteland warfare, involving coordinated units moving with purpose and efficiency that suggested extensive training and battlefield experience. Tyler's machine gun laid down suppressing fire as the team executed a fighting withdrawal up the canyon walls, his heavy weapons creating temporary barriers of devastating firepower that forced pursuing zombies to seek cover and regroup. Riley maintained her mobile medical station while monitoring team stress levels and physical condition, knowing that panic or injury could doom the entire extraction operation in terrain that favored pursuers over retreating forces. Alexis sprinted ahead of the main group, using her scout training to identify escape routes and potential ambush sites while maintaining communication with Marcus through tactical hand signals. Her reconnaissance revealed that the zombie facility had multiple security perimeters extending far beyond the central construction area, with concealed observation posts and reaction forces positioned to intercept intruders attempting to flee through the surrounding wilderness. The defensive network was sophisticated and comprehensive, suggesting that this installation was far more important to zombie operations than a simple construction project. Emma's demolitions expertise proved crucial as she triggered carefully placed charges that created rock slides and debris barriers, slowing zombie pursuit while providing the team with temporary defensive positions during their retreat. Her explosives were running dangerously low, but each detonation was precisely calculated to maximize tactical advantage while conserving precious resources for the extended running battle that seemed inevitable. The shaped charges brought down strategic sections of canyon wall, creating choke points that forced pursuing zombies into narrow corridors where concentrated firepower could be most effective. Devon's analysis of zombie communication intercepts revealed that their facility was part of a much larger network, with installations across multiple states coordinating activities through encrypted radio transmissions and data sharing protocols. The technical sophistication indicated access to advanced equipment and specialized personnel, suggesting that the zombie infection had preserved not just individual intelligence, but institutional knowledge and organizational capabilities that enabled strategic planning on a regional scale. His electronic warfare equipment continued jamming enemy communications, but the zombies were adapting their frequencies and protocols faster than his countermeasures could compensate. The pursuit force consisted of hundreds of zombies organized into tactical units with specialized equipment and clearly defined roles within their command structure. Marcus observed their movements through his scope, noting the professional spacing, coordinated fire and movement techniques, and sophisticated use of terrain that indicated retained military training or extensive post-infection tactical education. These weren't shambling corpses driven by hunger, but disciplined soldiers capable of sustained operations and complex mission objectives that could threaten every human settlement in the region. Jake's overwatch position became untenable as zombie counter-snipers began engaging his location with surprisingly accurate fire from improvised but effective long-range weapons. His tactical withdrawal required split-second timing and perfect coordination with team movements, using smoke grenades and diversionary tactics to mask his displacement while maintaining suppressing fire against priority targets. The zombie marksman demonstrated skills that suggested military training, using advanced techniques for range estimation, wind compensation, and target tracking that should have been impossible for reanimated corpses. Tyler's ammunition supply reached critical levels as the fighting withdrawal continued up the treacherous canyon terrain, forcing him to transition from suppressing fire to precision engagement of high-value targets. His machine gun had become their primary defensive asset, but ammunition conservation required careful target selection and perfect timing to maintain effective defensive coverage while avoiding the waste that could leave them defenseless. The heavy weapons specialist coordinated his fire with team movements, providing covering fire during critical movement phases while repositioning to maintain tactical advantage. Riley's medical supplies were organized for immediate battlefield treatment, but the extended running battle was placing enormous physical and psychological stress on every team member. Her training included combat stress management techniques that helped maintain team cohesion and decision-making capability under extreme pressure, but the unprecedented nature of their enemy was testing psychological resilience in ways that traditional survival training hadn't anticipated. The discovery that zombies were capable of organized warfare challenged fundamental assumptions about post-apocalyptic survival and human superiority over infected populations. Emma's remaining explosives were husbanded carefully as the team approached the canyon rim, where open terrain would expose them to zombie observation and long-range weapons fire. Her demolitions plan involved creating a final defensive barrier that could buy enough time for extraction while denying zombie forces the ability to pursue them into the wasteland beyond the facility perimeter. The calculations were complex, requiring precise timing and coordination with team movements to avoid casualties from friendly fire while maximizing tactical effectiveness against pursuing enemies. As the team crested the canyon rim, they discovered that their extraction route was compromised by zombie forces that had somehow anticipated their escape vector and positioned blocking units along their planned withdrawal corridor. The tactical situation had deteriorated beyond standard operating procedures, requiring immediate adaptation and innovative solutions to avoid encirclement by enemy forces that demonstrated strategic thinking capabilities equal to or exceeding human military standards. Marcus faced decisions that would determine whether his team escaped with vital intelligence or became casualties in humanity's first major engagement with organized zombie civilization. The blocking force consisted of at least 50 zombies positioned in a textbook military ambush formation, with overlapping fields of fire and concealed positions that demonstrated tactical knowledge that should have been impossible for reanimated corpses to possess or execute. Marcus immediately recognized the professional spacing and coordination as the work of former military personnel whose combat training had somehow survived the infection process, creating an enemy that combined human tactical expertise with zombie resilience and fearlessness. Devon's electronic surveillance equipment detected multiple radio transmissions coordinating the ambush, indicating that zombie command elements had successfully predicted their escape route and positioned forces accordingly, a level of strategic thinking that elevated the threat far beyond anything humanity had prepared to face. Jake's sniper rifle engaged the most dangerous targets first, his precision shots targeting zombie heavy weapon specialists and communication personnel in an attempt to disrupt their coordination before the main engagement began, but return fire from zombie marksmen forced him to constantly relocate his position while maintaining effective suppressing fire. Tyler's machine gun opened up with devastating effect as the team charged directly into the zombie ambush, his aggressive tactics catching the enemy off guard and creating a corridor of destruction through their defensive line. The heavy weapon specialist had loaded his remaining ammunition with alternating rounds designed for maximum effectiveness against zombie physiology, including explosive projectiles that caused massive tissue damage and fragmenting bullets that created multiple wound channels to ensure permanent incapacitation. Riley moved with the advancing team, her medical kit ready for immediate trauma treatment while her trained eyes monitored each team member for signs of injury or combat stress that could compromise their fighting effectiveness during the critical breakthrough attempt. Alexis flanked the zombie position through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate under fire, her scout training allowing her to identify and exploit microterrain features that provided concealment from enemy observation and weapons fire. Her assault rifle chattered in precise bursts as she engaged zombie flank security, creating confusion and forcing the enemy to divide their attention between multiple threats rather than concentrating fire on the main team advance. Through her scope, she observed zombie commanders attempting to coordinate defensive responses through hand signals and radio communications, their tactical reactions indicating retained knowledge of small unit leadership and battlefield management techniques. Emma's final demolitions charges were placed with surgical precision to create maximum disruption of zombie defensive positions while providing the team with temporary concealment during their breakthrough attempt. Her shaped charges detonated in sequence, sending shrapnel and debris cascading through zombie ranks while creating smoke screens that masked team movements and disrupted enemy observation capabilities. The explosions were perfectly timed to coincide with the team's assault, maximizing tactical advantage while conserving the last of their precious explosive resources for potential future engagements. Devon's technical warfare capabilities proved crucial as he identified and jammed zombie communication frequencies, isolating individual units from their command structure and creating tactical confusion that prevented coordinated defensive responses. His electronic countermeasures included signal jamming, false transmissions, and data corruption techniques that degraded zombie information systems while providing the team with temporary technological superiority. The zombie communication equipment was surprisingly sophisticated, featuring encryption protocols and frequency hopping capabilities that suggested access to advanced military hardware and technical expertise. The breakthrough battle reached maximum intensity as both sides committed their remaining resources to what appeared to be a decisive engagement that would determine the outcome of the entire mission. Marcus coordinated team movements through tactical communications while engaging targets of opportunity with his assault rifle, his combat experience allowing him to process multiple streams of battlefield information simultaneously while making split-second decisions that kept his team alive and moving toward their objective. The zombie defensive response demonstrated remarkable tactical flexibility, with units adjusting their positions and fire patterns in real time to counter evolving team movements and engagement techniques. Jake's Overwatch fire became increasingly critical as zombie forces attempted to envelop the team's flanks, his precision shooting eliminating key threats while providing the accurate intelligence needed for tactical decision-making under extreme pressure. His ammunition count had reached critical levels, forcing him to make every shot count while maintaining the rapid engagement tempo required to suppress zombie defensive fire. The enemy marksmen were demonstrating skills that matched or exceeded his own capabilities, using advanced shooting techniques and equipment that suggested extensive military training and experience. Tyler's machine gun fire created a moving wall of destruction as the team fought through the zombie defensive perimeter, his heavy weapons providing the suppressing fire needed to maintain forward momentum while avoiding the static defensive positions that would allow zombie forces to concentrate their firepower effectively. His tactical movement techniques included fire and maneuver principles that maximized weapon effectiveness while minimizing exposure to enemy fire, but ammunition limitations were forcing increasingly aggressive tactics that traded safety for ammunition conservation. Riley's battlefield medicine skills were tested as the intensity of combat reached levels that pushed human endurance beyond normal limits, requiring her to monitor team physical condition while preparing for immediate medical intervention if anyone sustained serious injuries. Her training included combat stress management techniques that helped maintain team cohesion and fighting effectiveness under conditions that would have broken less experienced units, but the unprecedented nature of their intelligent zombie enemies was creating psychological pressure that traditional survival training hadn't anticipated. As the team finally broke through the zombie defensive perimeter and reached open terrain, they discovered that their escape had triggered a massive mobilization throughout the entire zombie network, with radio transmissions indicating that installations across multiple states were coordinating a regional response to contain the intelligence breach and eliminate the human infiltration team before they could report their discoveries to surviving military command structures. The regional mobilization created a net of coordinated zombie forces that stretched across hundreds of miles, with radio intercepts revealing strategic coordination between installations that had previously been considered isolated threats rather than components of a unified military network. Marcus led his team through a desperate cross-country movement that required every survival skill they had developed during 18 months of wasteland warfare, navigating around zombie patrol routes and observation posts while maintaining the speed necessary to stay ahead of pursuing forces that seemed to anticipate their every tactical decision. Devon's electronic warfare equipment detected massive communication traffic indicating that zombie command elements were directing resources from multiple states toward their interception, creating a tactical situation that resembled fighting an entire army rather than scattered groups of infected survivors. Jake's sniper skills proved invaluable during the extended running battle, his precision shooting eliminating zombie scouts and communication specialists who attempted to track their movement and report position updates to pursuing forces. His ammunition had reached critical levels, forcing him to make every shot count while maintaining the rapid engagement tempo needed to disrupt zombie surveillance networks and prevent accurate tracking of team movements through the increasingly hostile terrain. The zombie pursuit forces demonstrated remarkable persistence and tactical sophistication, using leapfrog movements and coordinated searches that indicated advanced training in tracking and pursuit operations against skilled human opponents. Tyler's machine gun provided mobile firepower during multiple contact situations as zombie blocking forces attempted to intercept their escape route, his heavy weapons creating corridors of destruction through enemy positions while the team maintained their desperate flight toward friendly territory. The ammunition shortage had forced increasingly creative tactical solutions, including the use of improvised explosive devices and terrain manipulation to multiply the effectiveness of their limited remaining firepower. His tactical experience suggested that they were facing an enemy with resources and organizational capabilities that exceeded most human military units that had survived the initial outbreak. Alexis ghosted ahead of the main group, using her scout training to identify safe passage routes while gathering intelligence on zombie force dispositions and movement patterns that could be exploited during their extraction attempt. Her reconnaissance revealed that the zombie network extended far beyond anything human intelligence had suspected, with installations, patrol routes, and communication networks that covered vast geographical areas and suggested a level of post-outbreak organization that challenged fundamental assumptions about zombie capabilities and long-term survival prospects for human civilization. Riley maintained her mobile medical station while monitoring team physical and psychological condition during the extended high-stress operation, her training allowing her to identify and treat the combat fatigue and stress injuries that threatened to compromise team effectiveness during the final phases of their escape attempt. Her medical supplies had been carefully rationed throughout the mission, but the physical demands of sustained combat operations were pushing every team member beyond normal human endurance limits and requiring innovative treatment protocols for conditions that traditional military medicine hadn't anticipated. Emma's demolitions expertise created strategic delays in zombie pursuit operations through carefully placed charges that destroyed bridges, blocked roads, and created terrain obstacles that forced pursuing forces to use alternate routes and extended movement times. Her explosive resources were completely exhausted, but the tactical delays had provided crucial time advantages that allowed the team to maintain their lead over zombie forces that possessed superior numbers and local terrain knowledge. The pursuit revealed zombie logistics capabilities that included vehicle operations, supply coordination, and sustained operations across wide geographical areas. Devon's technical analysis of intercepted zombie communications revealed the true scope of the threat facing human survivors, with evidence of coordinated operations involving hundreds of installations across multiple states and sophisticated command structures that suggested the infection had preserved and enhanced organizational capabilities rather than simply reanimating individual corpses. His electronic intelligence indicated that zombie research and development activities were continuing to advance their technological capabilities, creating weapons, communication systems, and tactical equipment that could soon match or exceed human military capabilities. The team's extraction route led through territories that showed increasing evidence of zombie colonization efforts, including agricultural projects, manufacturing facilities, and population centers that indicated long-term planning and resource development rather than simple survival activities. Marcus coordinated movement through these areas while gathering additional intelligence that painted an increasingly dire picture of zombie expansion and technological advancement that threatened to overwhelm human defensive capabilities within months rather than years. As they finally reached the perimeter of the riverside settlement after 72 hours of continuous movement and combat operations, the team carried intelligence that would fundamentally change human understanding of the post-apocalyptic threat environment and survival prospects. The zombie network they had discovered represented an existential threat that required immediate strategic response from every surviving human military organization and civilian settlement across the continent. Marcus gathered his exhausted team for debriefing as settlement security forces provided overwatch and medical support, knowing that their intelligence would trigger massive changes in human defensive strategies and resource allocation priorities. The discovery of organized zombie civilization meant that the post-apocalyptic world had entered a new phase of warfare between two species competing for planetary dominance, with technological advantages shifting toward an enemy that combined human intelligence with supernatural resilience and fearlessness. The mission had succeeded in gathering critical intelligence, but the cost had been the revelation that humanity's survival prospects were far more precarious than anyone had realized. The zombie network possessed resources, organization, and strategic capabilities that could threaten every human settlement simultaneously, creating a tactical situation that required unprecedented cooperation between surviving military units and civilian populations. As settlement commanders gathered to receive their briefing, Marcus knew that the war for human survival was entering its deadliest phase, with enemies that could plan, coordinate, and execute military operations with efficiency that matched or exceeded human capabilities while possessing advantages that made traditional military doctrine obsolete in the face of an evolving threat that grew stronger with each passing day.